Chapter 1. 1. The tradition. The first mile was always the hardest. At least that was what Aaron used to say back when the three of them were young enough to believe that pain had rules. Now, at 35, he wasn't so sure. The first mile of the 100-mile wilderness already felt like a warning. Early September is probably the most beautiful season. Leaves changing, there is a chill in the air in a way that makes everything smell fresh and clean. The forest swallowed the last sliver of gravel road behind them, the trees closing in with the quiet finality of a door closing. Above, the canopy knitted tight enough to dim the late morning light to a greenish gloom. Damp air clung to their skin. Even the birds sounded far away, muted by distance and moss. Derek adjusted the straps on his pack for the third time, a bit uneasy. Did you ever hear about the three idiots that got lost and were never heard from again? You're the idiot, Aaron replied. No, you are, Derek muttered. Mark, always out in front, stop it. You always do this, bickering like schoolgirls, let's go already. Have you ever seen 5 or 6 women standing in a group, talking to each other? Well, if you have, then you know what a cackle of women is, Derek said, laughing. Mark said nothing, but what Derek said was kind of funny. His strides were always the most confident, broad, and steady. Derek followed in his usual grumbling about something way. Aaron walked behind them, already analyzing, already calculating for any contingencies. It's been 10 years since Aaron started his medical career, first medical school, then residency, and the long, grinding years of internal medicine. He never stopped going on these annual hikes, not once, but the wilderness felt different now. Less like a challenge and more just as an annual custom as certain as Thanksgiving or Christmas. Still, he was the one who had pushed for the 100-mile wilderness this year. In Maine, out of all places. This part of the Appalachian Trail was called the 100-mile wilderness due to how remote it was, no cell service, no people, just the land and the trees, millions of trees everywhere you looked. But it was breathtaking in beauty. After an hour, they reached the first stream and crossed it. Nothing dramatic, just a stream of cold water running over smooth stones, and Derek crouched to splash his face. Man, I needed this, he said. Feels good to be off the grid. I swear, if one more customer yell at me for losing their package. You did lose their package, Mark reminded him. Yeah, but not on purpose. I think that someone stole it out of my truck. Aaron watched them bicker and felt something warm in his chest. This trip was supposed to be uncomplicated, a return to the simplicity they'd had at 17 when they'd first stepped onto a trail together with packs that were too heavy and a map they barely knew how to read. Back then, the world had seemed endless, and all they needed were their feet and each other. Now the stakes were different, not the hike and not the guys, but something. Do you think that there is wolf out here? Derek asked. I heard that they come down from Canada and eat people like us. Aaron giggled. Yep, he said, but they only pick people that looks like you. Relax, Mark said, straightening. We're only a few miles in. Once the rhythm kicks in, you'll forget all your worries. And if anything, I still have my .38 that my dad gave me. I hope that you remembered to bring bullets for it, Derek said. Yes, 3. 1 for each of us, Mark said, laughing. Derek looked around at the towering pines, the dense underbrush, the absolute absence of human noise. I dunno, man. This place feels like it forgot about people a long time ago. Aaron didn't say it out loud, but he agreed. It felt a bit ominous. The trail here wasn't like the southern stretches they had hiked before. Those felt broken in, shaped by countless boots. Maine's wilderness was feral. The path narrowed in places until it was just a suggestion, a crease between ferns. Roots knuckled up like old bones. Mud sucked at their boots. The air tasted like fertile soil and lake water. And always, always the silence. That is what he liked the best. The silence, the absence of noise. Of course, you had the birds and other forest sounds, but they were not noise. They created a symphony of stillness and tranquility. A couple of hours in, they stopped at a small clearing where the sunlight pierced through the leaves. Mark shrugged off his pack and cracked open a bag of trail mix. "So," he said, tossing a peanut into his mouth, "year number 17. Hard to believe we've stuck with it this long." "Traditions keep us sane," Aaron said. "Well, let's not talk about your sanity, or lack thereof," Derek replied, giggling. "Traditions are how people end up in cults." Mark laughed. "Worst cult ever. 3 guys and only one of them sane. I guess that it makes me the cult leader." "We'll probably end up carrying you," Derek said again, pointing at Mark's already damp shirt. "You're sweating like we're climbing Everest." "It's humid," Mark protested. "And I'm carrying the tent." "You volunteered." Aaron let them tease each other, but a dull ache was settling low in his abdomen, something he tried to ignore. Probably nothing. He'd slept badly the night before, nerves and excitement knotting in his stomach. Maybe it was just that. Maybe. But as he adjusted his pack and forced himself to straighten, the ache flared enough to make him wince. Mark noticed. "You good?" "Yeah," Aaron lied. "Just need to loosen this hip strap." Mark nodded, accepting the explanation. Derek didn't notice at all, which, Aaron thought, was both typical and comforting. They resumed the trail. "What do we do if we run into a moose?" Aaron asked. "You just go up and pet him, give him an apple or something," Mark said. "Damn, guys, you are supposed to be smart and intelligent. Guess not. A moose will hurt you, so just back off slowly and pray that he does not attack. By the way, did you know that a moose will kick straight forward with his front legs, not like a horse, and his hoofs are split and very sharp?" Derek continued, "I knew a guy that went out to the barn one evening and a moose was standing outside the barn. He walked up and tried to scare the moose away and the moose kicked him. He ended up in the hospital with lots of stitches." "Or I can shoot him with my .38, Mark said. The forest deepened around them. The air cooled. The sound of water from the stream faded behind them and was replaced by the faint rustle of unseen things moving through brush. A wooden sign was placed up ahead, weathered by decades of storms. "You are now entering the 100-mile wilderness. No places to obtain supplies or assistance. For the next 100 miles, do not attempt unless properly equipped and experienced." Derek read it and let out a low whistle. "That's intense." Mark slapped him on the back. "Hey, look on the bright side. We're finally doing something hardcore." Aaron stared at the sign longer than the others. What bothered him the most was that there was no cell phone coverage up here, and they had not brought any emergency flares. Got to remember that next year, he thought. They were truly cut off now. Whatever happened from here on out, they would face it alone. They stepped forward, crossing the threshold into the deep wild. Chapter 2. The Warning Sign. The temperature dropped almost instantly as the sun was beginning to set, the canopy swallowing the remaining light until everything was the color of deep moss. The air was so still that every footstep sounded like a thud, not loud, but just loud enough to announce their coming, as if the forest was listening. Mark took the lead again, pushing a branch aside. "We're officially off-grid," he said. "No turning back now." Derek gave a low whistle. "I mean, we could turn back. There's nothing morally stopping us." "Morally? When did morals ever stop you from doing anything?" Mark said, "Don't be such a chicken. Guys, we have done about 5 hours and the sun is setting. How about we start looking for a place to camp tonight?" Mark said. They all agreed on this. Aaron brought up the rear, shifting his pack, trying to keep his gait even. The pain in his abdomen pulsed in a slow, stubborn rhythm. It wasn't debilitating, but something about the depth of it felt wrong, as if the ache came from a place lower and tighter than any normal stomach cramp. He kept touching the side of his pack, pretending to adjust it every few minutes so the others wouldn't see him wince. The trail narrowed, then disappeared into a section of wetland crossings. Wooden planks, weathered, slick, and uneven, stretched across the marsh like crooked teeth. A dragonfly buzzed past Aaron's ear. Something splashed in the water to their left, unseen. Okay, it looks to be about 500 yards or so across. Let's do this, and once on the other side, we set up camp, Mark said. As usual, the others agreed. Mark stepped onto the first plank, balancing confidently. Just take it slow, he called back. Derek went next, arms out for balance. Aaron moved last. The wood flexed under his weight. Somewhere in the marsh, a rustling noise rose, like something shifting through the reeds. Too big to be a frog and too slow to be the wind. Aaron paused, scanning, but the surface stayed dark and still. It took them about an hour to cross. It was more treacherous than they had expected it to be. Mark was the first to step on solid ground, then Derek. Aaron had lagged and still had about 50 yards to go. Dude, Derek said, don't make me come for you. You know I'll fall in, and then I'll be mad at everyone, especially whoever invented wetlands. Aaron forced himself forward. The pain shifted as he stepped, like a hot wire tightening. He swallowed hard. This is not good, he thought. I give it a while longer. Aaron finally made it over and regrouped. There is a good spot, Aaron said, and pointed to a few trees set apart from the wood line. It will provide cover from the wind. The tent was easy to set up. They had done it many times before, and it was routine by now. Mark and Derek collected dry branches from the lowest part of the pine trees and dead wood from the ground. The wood that they picked up off the ground was dry, even though it appeared to be wet. That was only on the outside, so it would be perfect for their fire tonight. Mark had brought a bottle of Kingsford starter fluid, so the fire was going strong within minutes. I know that it is cheating, he said, but why make it harder than it has to be? They all ate hot dogs that night. Chapter 3. Day 2. It had been an uneventful night. Derek got up first and rekindled the fire, putting a pot of water right in the fire to boil water for coffee. They brought instant coffee that tasted really bad, but it was part of what they did. Come on, guys, get up, he yelled. He got some mumbles back, but there was movement inside the tent, and soon Aaron and Mark came out. It was not daylight yet. They still had an hour or so before they headed out. What does your map say? Aaron asked. Mark took out the map from his backpack, studied it for a bit, and said, "It will get steeper and rockier from now. Probably most of the day. I'd say that we are looking at no more than 5 miles today before nightfall." Mark smirked. That's why we trained, right? We trained, Derek repeated. When? You think walking around the UPS warehouse counts as cardio? Cardio is cardio. If you say so. They headed out just as the sun started to climb above the treetops, the trail rising into rockier terrain. The grade wasn't steep, but the footing was treacherous, with roots snaking across the ground in patterns that looked almost deliberate, like traps set by the forest. Aaron slowed without meaning to. Every few steps the pain flared, sharp enough to steal his breath. Mark noticed first. You good back there? He called. Fine, Aaron said too quickly. Just pacing myself. Mark nodded, but the concern in his expression lingered. Derek wiped sweat from his forehead. I swear the air here is, thicker. Like breathing through soup. Humidity, Mark said. We're near the lakes. Derek gestured around them. Where are the lakes? You'll see them soon enough, Mark said, rolling his eyes, but kept walking. Aaron slowed again. Not enough for them to stop, but enough for his mind to start doing what he dreaded most, calculating. Pain location, right lower quadrant. Onset, gradual but worsening. Rebound tenderness, yes. Nausea, mild. Fever, maybe. He felt warm, but it could have been exertion. Appendicitis? Possibly. Early? Maybe. Or not early at all. He pushed the thought away. No point diagnosing himself now. No point worrying the others unless absolutely necessary. They were excited about this trip. He did not want to be the reason it fell apart. The trail opened briefly into a small overlook, a rocky outcrop facing a valley of dark pine. Mist curled along the treetops like smoke, accentuated by the early morning sun. Derek stepped forward toward the steep drop-off. Okay, I get it. This place is insane. Mark grinned. Right? This is why we do these trips. Aaron tried to admire the view, but his vision pulsed faintly around the edges. A wave of dizziness swept through him, faint but unmistakable. He blinked it back. Beautiful, he said, though his voice felt hollow in his own ears. Mark sat on a log and pulled out a protein bar. We'll break here for a minute. Hydrate. Aaron nodded, relieved for the pause. He lowered himself onto a rock and breathed slowly, hand drifting toward his abdomen before he forced it away. Derek flopped down dramatically. If I die out here, bury me somewhere scenic. And make sure my headstone says he tried. Tried what? And you're not dying, Mark said. I said if. You're not. Aaron opened his water bottle. His hand trembled slightly. He hoped neither of them saw it. He took a sip, and the cold water did nothing to settle the rising unease inside him. The forest around them creaked with distant shifting branches. A low, guttural sound, maybe wind, maybe not, rolled through the valley. Derek paused mid-bite. Okay, what was that? Probably a moose, Mark said. Moose make that sound? Some of them. How many kinds of moose are there? Could have been a wolf or a bear. Mark stretched his legs out. Yep, or your grandmother, relax, dude. As long as we don't surprise any of you imagined creatures, we're fine. Okay, Derek said, pointing at the tree line. Define surprise. Mark opened his mouth to answer, quickly turned his head towards Aaron. Another spike of pain had knifed through him, sharper now, deeper. He sucked in a breath. Aaron, Mark said. Aaron forced a nod. Just a cramp. Mark didn't look convinced. Derek, for once, stayed quiet, watching him with an expression that was almost worried. Aaron hated that. Hated being the weak one. Hated the vulnerability of it. These hikes were the one part of his life where he felt like himself instead of the doctor who had to have all the answers. He straightened, swallowing the pain. No, not yet. Don't ruin this. Not on the first day. Let's keep moving, he said. Mark hesitated. You sure? Yeah. After a moment, Mark rose and nodded. Okay, but if you need to stop, say so. I said I'm fine. They gathered their packs. Derek stepped closer, lowering his voice. Hey, you don't look that good. Aaron met his eyes. I'm okay. You sure? Aaron forced a smile. Positive. Derek searched his face, then nodded, though reluctantly. All right. But if you puke on me, I swear to God. Noted. They left the overlook and plunged back into the forest. The trees closed around them, shadows stretching across the narrow trail. Aaron adjusted his pack again, trying to steady his breathing. Something was wrong and he knew it, but did not want to accept it. Chapter 4. Second night in the wilderness. By the time they reached the top of the hill, they were exhausted. The uphill, rocky terrain had proven more difficult than they had anticipated. The sunlight had thinned into soft, bruised gold. The trees parted just enough to reveal a circular patch of ground where countless hikers had camped before them, flat surfaces, scattered firestones, a log, half burnt from someone's old attempt at warmth. Mark dropped his pack beside a spruce and rolled his shoulders. Not bad for day 2. Derek let out a theatrical groan and flopped onto the nearest fallen log. Not bad? I feel like my spine tried to eject itself halfway up that last ridge. Aaron chuckled and eased his pack off more slowly. His lower abdomen twinged. Not sharp, not alarming, but enough to make him pause. He hit it well. He'd gotten good at hiding things. Derek stretched out dramatically on the ground. My legs are on strike until further notice. Mark laughed while pulling out the tent components. Tomorrow's worse. Don't want to hear it, Derek muttered. The light banter settled something in the clearing. It made it feel safe and familiar. The wilderness felt less overwhelming when they were all talking, teasing, filling the silence with their usual nonsense. Once the tents were up, Derek set about gathering small branches while Aaron used the time to walk a short circle near the tree line. He told himself he was stretching. Truthfully, he was listening to his body. The pain he felt before had settled down, and now it was hardly noticeable. Great, he thought. That scared me a bit, but I'm good. By the time Mark coaxed a flame into life, the shadows had lengthened and the forest around them was thick with humming insects and the crisp, resinous scent of pine. They settled around the fire, cooking instant noodles and sipping water as the twilight deepened. Derek poked at the fire. How far until the shelter tomorrow? 10, maybe 12 miles, Mark said. Moderate terrain. Some climbs. Define moderate, Derek said, suspicion dripping from his voice. Moderate for people who train more than you do. Derek threw a pine cone at him. The normal or average distance a person walks on trails like this is between 14 and 20 miles. It all depends on the trail and how well trained, or lack of, you are. Aaron smiled faintly but fell quiet. He actually felt really good since the pain had eased off. He became more talkative and engaged. Mark noticed. I'm glad to see that you are back to normal again. What was up with you earlier, he said. Aaron shrugged. I really don't know. My side hurt like hell, and it had me worried for a while, but about an hour ago, it just eased off, so I'm just a bit stiff. Sure glad it eased off, though. I wonder where that came from. You're in better shape than both of us put together. No clue, Aaron replied lightly, but he was still a bit puzzled. Night crept in, the way mountain nights do, starting faint, then sudden, then absolute. Once the fire crackled into a rhythm, the darkness beyond the trees felt heavier, like something that settled rather than simply appeared. God, listen to that, Derek whispered. The forest hummed. Insects, the rustle of distant branches. A faint, steady chorus of unseen life. Feels bigger than it did earlier, Derek added. Aaron sipped water, listening. His unease was still there. He couldn't tell if he was anxious or just overtired. The pain pulsed once, briefly, but sharper than before. He kept his expression neutral and stared into the fire. Mark watched him again. Aaron sensed it, but didn't react. The silence spun out between them for a while. Comfortable, then complicated, then quiet in a way that made the forest seem louder. Derek eventually sighed and lay back on his pack, staring up at the threadbare patch of stars visible through the canopy. We're really doing this, huh? No phones, no noise, just nothing for 100 miles. It's not nothing, Mark said. It's everything. Aaron didn't speak. His abdomen throbbed again, not bad, but familiar. A resident's worst déjà vu. A shadow of cases he'd seen before. He told himself it was coincidence. Early trail fatigue. Maybe dehydration. He didn't want to imagine the alternative. When they finally crawled into their tents, the forest felt quiet except for the regular and familiar sounds. Aaron lay awake longer than he meant to. The ache was still there, but so much better than earlier in the day. Sleep eventually found him, thin and restless, filled with dreams he couldn't quite remember. Chapter 5. The Weight of Silence. The trail kept going up, not much, just steep enough to force a steady rhythm. Step, breath, step, breath. The kind of slope that didn't look intimidating on a map, but drained you anyway, inch by inch. They all started to get a bit tired. They kept a steady gait. They were at the point where you turn inward and your thoughts take over, a comfortable walking pace, the smells of the forest, the soft ground. This was almost nirvana. Well, maybe not, but something like it. Aaron kept his pace steady and careful. His right side ached with every step, the pain crawling lower, sharper. It was concerning that it returned. Yesterday evening, he felt fine and relieved. Up ahead, Mark walked with the easy confidence of someone who had organized the entire trip down to calorie counts and expected mileage. Derek followed a few steps behind, humming under his breath the way he always did. Aaron lagged behind, not enough to seem alarming, but enough for Mark to notice. "Hey," Mark called down the trail, turning slightly. "You good back there?" "Yep," Aaron said quickly. "Just pacing myself." Mark hesitated, then nodded and turned back. Derek waited for Aaron to catch up. When he did, Derek looked at him. "You look pale," he said. "Thank you," Aaron said. "Real confidence booster." Derek smirked, but the expression didn't reach his eyes. He fell silent, and they kept walking. The forest around them grew denser as they climbed. Pines crowded the trail, their trunks damp and dark, their branches knitting together high above like they had entered a cathedral. The light dimmed, turning a muted green that made every color feel off by half a shade. It felt farther from civilization than anything Aaron had ever experienced. The deeper they went, the quieter it became. A bead of sweat slid down Aaron's spine despite the chill in the air. The pain, dull pressure all morning, was crawling toward something sharper. Something dangerous. He had seen this once before, during residency. A patient with early appendicitis. He remembered the pale skin, the guarded movements, and he remembered the rupture. A bead of sweat slid down Aaron's spine despite the chill in the air. The pain, dull pressure all morning, was crawling toward something sharper. "Aaron," Mark called again. "Drink some water." "I'm fine." Mark slowed his pace until the three were walking together. Derek glanced between them, clearly sensing tension but not pushing it. They climbed a narrow section of trail cut into the side of a hill. It angled upward sharply, forcing them to lean forward. Rocks clattered under their boots. Far below, they could hear a creak. Aaron stepped onto a tilted rock and felt a bolt of pain so suddenly, it hollowed him out. He froze. The others didn't notice at first. He put a hand on a nearby tree, waiting for the sensation to ebb, but it didn't. It just sharpened, then settled into something deep and wrong. His breathing grew shallow. He knew what rebound tenderness meant. He knew fever wasn't far behind, and he knew exactly how bad this could get. He knew that they were easily 30 miles into wilderness with no available communications. Mark finally noticed he'd stopped. "Hey, Aaron." Aaron forced himself upright, swallowing hard. "Sorry. Stepped funny." Mark stared at him for a long moment. "Something is wrong, dude." Aaron shrugged. "I'll walk it off." "I don't think that you can walk this off, whatever it is." "Mark." Aaron's voice came out sharper than he intended. "Drop it." Derek pretended to adjust his pack, but he was listening. Of course he was. Derek drilled packages into empty front porches for a living, but he wasn't stupid. Mark gestured at a fallen log. "Sit for a second." Aaron shook his head. "If I sit, I stiffen. I need to keep moving." Mark hesitated, jaw tight. Derek's voice was light, but brittle. "Trail's not going anywhere, dude. We can take a break." Aaron closed his eyes. He could see the truth from every angle, and he could feel the clock ticking inside his abdomen. He opened his eyes again. "Let's just find some shelter." Mark exhaled, not satisfied, but unwilling to force the issue. "Fine. But I'm carrying half your pack weight." "No," Aaron said immediately. "Yes," Mark said, already unfastening straps. "This isn't a debate." Derek added, more quietly, "Dude, it's not a pride contest." Aaron hesitated, then reluctantly let Mark take the heavier items, the stove, tent parts, food bag. His pack was lightened significantly. As they resumed hiking, the air cooled further. Clouds gathered overhead, dimming the light until the forest felt like dusk even though it wasn't. Their boots thudded against the damp ground. At one point, Derek murmured, "Feels like the woods are swallowing the sound." Mark snorted. That's what happens when you're 100 miles into nowhere. But Aaron felt it too. A kind of pressure. A thickness in the air. The pain pulsed again, deeper now, but he kept walking. He didn't tell them that his vision had tunneled for a moment. He didn't tell them about the heat spreading across his abdomen. He didn't tell them that he was scared, truly, quietly terrified. He didn't have to. Mark kept glancing back at him, eyes tight. Derek hummed less and less, the silence stretching thin and brittle between the three of them. As the forest closed around them, narrowing the trail into a single-file corridor, Aaron had his first undeniable thought. We shouldn't be here. Not like this. Not now. The woods swallowed them a little deeper. Chapter 6. The Crossing. After an uneventful second night, the morning came with a twinge of cold and damp. The wind had softened overnight, but the cold had settled into the mid-30s, like an ache in the bone, a pressure behind the eyes. Aaron woke up first. He'd slept poorly, drifting in and out of shallow dreams filled with dull abdominal throbs and that faint crawling sensation across his lower belly. The pain had returned. Mark and Derek were already stirring when he unzipped his sleeping bag. "You look like hell," Mark said, mostly teasing, but watching a little too carefully. Aaron forced a shrug. Couldn't get warm. It wasn't a lie. Just not the whole truth. Derek was checking the map, frowning at the faint cloud cover. "We move in 15. We've got a long crossing to the ridge. Eat something." "Yeah," Mark said. "Breakfast. Powder and hot water. Our gourmet specialty." Aaron ate without appetite, conscious of a faint twisting in his abdomen, gone almost as soon as it appeared. Transient, he told himself. GI irritability. Dehydration. Nothing more. But he kept touching the spot low and right, where the sensation seemed to flicker like a pilot light trying to catch. They broke camp quickly. The canvas snapped as they folded it. They hooked on crampons, shouldered their packs, and set off. The first hours. The trail today was smoother, brighter, almost inviting. Derek, who took the lead, kept the pace steady, not pushing, but not wasting time. Aaron found himself slowing once or twice, a heaviness gathering behind his right hip. Each time he caught himself lagging, he pushed forward, unwilling to become the variable, the one altering the team's rhythm. Mark drifted back to walk beside him. "You're sure you're okay? You seemed off last night." "Just tired," Aaron said. Mark's eyes narrowed. "I've known you for 12 years. That answer's a decoy." "Mark, let it go." Mark did, but the concern didn't leave his face. By midday, the ridge was still distant, but once they were over it, it would be easier since it was downhill for a while. Derek called a short break behind a jagged cluster of boulders. Mark took photos. Derek studied maps. Aaron sat and pressed his gloved hand subtly against his lower abdomen. It hurt. Not badly. Not sharply. But undeniably. A quiet, deep pinch that radiated in a crescent pattern toward the center. Derek glanced over. "Stomach." Aaron nodded once. "Probably something I ate. Fluids will help." "You want to turn back?" Derek asked, almost too casually. Aaron looked up sharply. "No. We're at the point where turning back is almost equal to the distance we have to finish this." Mark appeared around the boulder. "You sure? I mean, we know that most of the way back is downhill, and from here forward, it looks as mostly uphill." "If it gets worse, I'll say something," Aaron said, "but this is nothing." "Well, you're the doc," Mark said. Derek watched him for a long moment. It wasn't judgment. It was calculation, the risk assessment of a man who felt responsible for 2 lives besides his own. "All right," Derek said finally. "But stay honest with us." Aaron gave a thin smile he didn't feel. "Always." Mark walked ahead now, stopping briefly to photograph the scenery. Derek followed, careful and methodical. Aaron stayed close behind, but the dull ache had become a companion, persistent now, not intermittent. He kept analyzing it clinically, trying to parse patterns, timings, triggers. He kept failing. Halfway to the crest, the pain sharpened into something sudden and mean. Aaron stopped walking. He didn't cry out, but his breath hitched audibly enough that Derek spun around. Aaron? God damn it, we gotta deal with this. Derek looked at the map. We have at least 4 hours to go, he said. Aaron forced himself straight again, breathing slow until the worst of the stab faded. It eased off, he said. I'll make it. They continued, but the pace had changed. Derek's vigilance doubled. Mark kept glancing back. Aaron tried to walk normally, though every step jarred his abdomen a little more than it should have. They reached the beginning of a narrow pass with high rock formations on both sides. Careful here, Derek warned. Aaron focused intensely on his footing. He felt slow, fogged. Twice he misjudged the angle of his step and had to steady himself. Mark's voice came over his shoulder, low. You're not okay. Mark moved beside him, hand on his arm. Tell us what's going on. Aaron closed his eyes. When he opened them, there was no point hiding it anymore. My right lower right side is tender, he said softly. It's been getting worse since morning, and it is a deep, constant pain, and sometimes it shoots through me like fire. Mark exhaled. Shit. Derek didn't curse. He just absorbed the information like another weather shift. Appendix? Aaron nodded once. Possibly. Possibly. Mark echoed. Aaron stared across the ice, jaw clenched. I don't want it to be what it feels like. But yes. Possibly. A long silence followed. Okay, Derek said, we have probably 1,000 feet, and then we will find a place as soon as we get to the tree line up ahead. Can you do it? Yes, I can do that. Let's just move slow and steady, Aaron said. The decision. They continued walking, and after about 100 yards, Derek stepped closer to Aaron, lowering his voice. Aaron, I'm asking you as your friend. What's the smartest move right now? I am not sure that continuing is the best choice. Aaron hesitated. The ache pulsed again, harder this time, radiating like a warning flare. When he finally answered, his voice was barely above a breath. I think we need to go back. Mark closed his eyes in relief, but Derek didn't relax. He only nodded once, firm, decisive. All right, Derek said. We will turn around. Slow pace. We will watch you closely. No heroics. Aaron swallowed. Right. But even as they began to adjust gear and pivot their route, Aaron felt a cold certainty settle in his gut. They had walked about 4 miles along the trail, so that meant they would have to walk 4 miles back to reach the place where they camped last night. Let's hope for the best. By the time they made it back, Aaron could hardly walk, and they had to support him so that he would not fall. You know this stuff. Tell us what to expect. Mark said, you must have done a number of these surgeries. Aaron looked at them both and said, first, I think that I have a fever, and that means that, in layman's terms, the appendix is about to burst. Once that happens, infection will set in. We will probably know when it happens. Most of the time, the pain goes away, and the fever may go away as well. But it is only temporary. After that, it becomes deadly. Derek thought for a while, and then he said, I've been thinking, we have 2 days before we get to our vehicle. If it comes to it, what if you were to tell us exactly what to do and how to do it? We could do the surgery here and now. I mean, before it bursts. Aaron and Mark looked at Derek in disbelief. Mark said, Are you totally insane? Aaron said, I appreciate you trying, but it is impossible. Even if one of you had appendicitis, I would not have attempted such surgery. We have no antibiotics, no anesthesia, no painkillers. Infection is an absolute certainty. Sepsis would set in, and death would come fast. And no, a stick between the teeth will not cut it. Before we turn in for the night, Mark said, I will look around and find material to make a sort of sled, like the Indians had, and we should be able to drag you if it comes to that. I'll give you a hand, Derek said. Chapter 7. The sled was finished at around 11 p.m. and, by then, Aaron had fallen into an on and off sleep. Mark and Derek realized that there was not going to be any sleep for them tonight, so they might as well get going. It was pitch black and the sun would not come up for hours, but they all had flashlights attached to a headband, so that was not a problem. The sled was made from two 7-foot poles from young birch trees that they had cut down and smaller horizontal sticks that separated the poles, forming a bed-like contraption. They had both stood back, looked at it, and realized that they would never become craftsmen. But hopefully it would do the job. They packed everything so that it would be all set to go before they woke Aaron up. When that was done, they walked over to Aaron's as he was sleeping on the ground on top of his sleeping bag. Aaron, are you awake? Aaron answered them, saying that he could not really sleep. Well, let's go, Mark said. We have everything set and time is of the essence here. Aaron managed to stand up and got his flashlight going. I feel a bit better so I can walk, he said, looking at the contraption that Mark and Derek had put together while he slept. They quickly got Aaron's things together and headed out. The sled was actually quite ingenious, since they could load their backpacks onto it instead of carrying them. The poles slid across the ground without problem since the ground was flat and wide enough. If Aaron get worse, I will fire my gun 3 times, Derek said to Mark. It is a signal of distress, and somebody might hear it. I am right here, Aaron said. Don't talk like I'm not here or that I am too sick to understand or something. It's really not cool. I am sorry, Derek said. I really did not mean anything by it. I'm sorry. Won't happen again. Sorry. Aaron kept up just fine. I think that I am getting better. Pain is almost gone, he said, as he took the lead. Mark and Derek looked at each other, both remembering what Aaron had told them about symptoms. When the appendix ruptures, there is usually a feeling of relief from pain, and sometimes the fever subsides as well. All right, Derek said. Lead the way, Aaron. The first hour, they made good time and covered a lot of ground. It was mostly slightly downhill, and the path was easy. A couple of times, they had to tilt the sled sideways to get through a narrow path, but overall, it was easy going. Aaron seemed to be okay and kept a steady pace like he used to do. Hey, Aaron, slow it down a bit. We have to pace ourselves, Mark said. Okay, Aaron said and slowed some. He knew that he only had so much time before things would turn ugly and wanted to get as far as possible before that happened. But what Mark had said made sense. You know that whenever you go on a trip, whether you drive or walk, going back always seems faster. Have you ever noticed that? Derek said. Aaron looked back at him. Yes, that is the way it feels because you recognize things along the way. We should get there by tomorrow morning, another 25 hours or so, easy peasy, Derek said. They had walked for about 2 hours when Mark called for a break. Neither Derek nor Aaron complained about it, and they quickly built a small fire, made coffee and soup. After 15 minutes or so, Derek was ready to continue, and they put out the fire. As Aaron attempted to get up, he gasped, "Oh fuck, that hurts," he said, holding his stomach and bending over. Mark and Derek looked at him, worried and concerned. I think it is easing off, Aaron said. I'll be okay. All right, Derek said, but please take it easy. They continued down the path for a couple 100 yards or so when Aaron stopped walking and sat down on the ground. He was shaking and very pale. I think that I have a fever, he said. My stomach hurts all over, not in any particular place, all over. Fuck, fuck, fuck. Give me a second. If it eases off, I'll continue. Mark and Derek sat down next to him. There was nothing that they could do, but the urgency increased by every minute that they were not walking. Aaron was scared, they could tell, and that made them even more worried since they knew that there was absolutely nothing that they could do to help him at this point. I'm going to try the gun, Derek said. He stood up, went to his backpack, and got his .38 revolver out. He then walked away from Mark and Aaron about 50 feet and fired his gun 3 times into the ground. He was not sure that this was something that you did if you needed help, but he had seen in a Western when he was a kid. Nothing to lose, he thought. "Why did you shoot into the ground?" Mark asked. "Well, what goes up must come down," Derek answered. "I wouldn't want the bullet to come down and hit a moose on the head or something." Mark just shook his head. When it came to Derek, he did that a lot. No gun fired in the distance as an answer, so they figured that nobody heard the 3 shots. The sun was rising above the treetops. No rain today. Aaron's condition had worsened. "Okay, Aaron, time to get on the sled," said Mark, trying to sound normal, but realized that he spoke as if he was speaking to a child. Both Mark and Derek put their backpacks on and readied the sled. "I think that you better leave me here. You can travel faster and get some help and come back for me," Aaron said. "Not happening," Derek said and walked over to Aaron and grabbed his arm. "Come on, let's go." Aaron slowly got up, wincing with pain as he did. Both Mark and Derek had to help him onto the sled. By now, Aaron had fever chills, so they wrapped him up in jackets and other stuff in an attempt to keep him warm. They slowly pulled the sled to try it out with Aaron on it, and it was not bad. It had a natural sway to it, like shock absorbers, that would make it more comfortable for Aaron. "Let's turn our phones on," Mark said. "I know that we don't have a signal yet, but as we get closer to the road, there is a chance. We will know if we get messages popping up." They both turned on their phones, no signal, and kept walking at a steady pace. At this point, they would reach the vehicle in 10 to 12 hours if they did not stop. Chapter 8. 8 a.m. The clock is ticking. Both Mark and Derek felt their strength draining, arms throbbing from the constant weight of the sled. They did not talk, just walked. Aaron was quiet for the most part, but every now and then he would yell out. They did not stop. After 2 hours of pulling the sled, they were both exhausted and decided to take a quick break. They gently put the sled down and went to check on Aaron. "How are you, Aaron?" Derek asked. Aaron mumbled something that Derek did not understand. Mark felt Aaron's forehead. "He is burning up, man," he said. "What the fuck do we do?" "We have to keep going," Derek said. "But I tell you now, I don't know how long my legs and arms can do this. I mean, we have 8 to 9 hours ahead of us, and if we don't get a signal, then I am not sure that he is going to make it." "Okay, let's rest for 10 minutes and then give it our best," Mark said as he pulled some energy bars from his backpack, his arms shaking from muscle exertion. He gave one to Derek. Derek suddenly looked up and said, "What if we take a rope and tie it from the pole that you are carrying to my side and put it over both our shoulders? We'd be like mules pulling a load." "Let's try it," Mark said, and they got a heavy rope out from Derek's backpack. They tied to the poles, and after making some adjustments, it looked like it could work. They would have to walk really close together, and their shoulders would probably protest, but they would be dividing the load. The trail was wide at this stage and slightly downward, and that helped a lot. It did not take long for them to realize that the rope cut into their shoulders, so they both used heavy sweaters that they folded double and positioned between the rope and shoulder. This helped, and the rope did not dig into the shoulders as hard as it did before. As they walked, they did not talk. Their brain was empty in a way that only guys can do and that amazes women. When a man is quiet, a woman, could be the wife, ask him, "What are you thinking about?" and he will truthfully answer nothing. It is not that the brain is empty. It is just very comfortable and restful, something women cannot understand, since apparently they are always thinking about a number of things at the same time. That is why a guy will, sometimes, answer what when the woman says something because he does not have a clue as to what she is talking about, whereas to the woman, it makes perfect sense since she was just thinking about a cat. 1, 2, 1, 2, step, pull, step. Eyes sometimes closed. Fatigue setting in, painful. Nausea, headache setting in. Maybe an hour went by, maybe 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, step, pull, step. Derek suddenly freed himself from the rope, Mark totally off guard, leading to the sled tipping precariously. Mark set down his side to prevent the sled from tipping over. Derek got on his knees and started vomiting, mostly water, since they had not eaten much. Mark sat down and waited for Derek to slow down some. "Are you okay, Derek?" "I'm fucking done," Derek said in between dry heaves. Mark crawled over to check on Aaron, who had not made a sound. Mark did not remember when he made a sound, whether it was moaning or saying something. "Aaron, how's it going? Still hanging in there?" Aaron moaned, but did not answer. Aaron's face was pale, almost transparent. His eyes had dark, black circles around them. Aaron's breathing was very slow, and it seemed as if he did not take full breaths. His lips had a bluish tint to them. "Hey, Derek," Mark said. "Aaron is in a bad way. We just have to go on. It can't be that far to go now." Mark checked his phone. No signal. "Check your phone," he said to Derek. Derek did nothing. Derek slowly shook his head, got up, and they both fixed the rope and slowly continued. They were both too tired to panic, even though they knew that time was slipping away from them. They walked, pulled, and tried to keep their balance, and pulled together at the same time, because if they did not, they would go sideways, and being as exhausted as they were, they may fall. They were making slow progress. An hour went by, and then, without a word or sound, Mark collapsed. He just felt like a tree someone cut down and did not move. "Mark, what the hell?" Derek said. Mark was breathing heavy, deep breaths, eyes closed. "I'm done," Mark said. "There is no more." "Let's just sit for a while," Derek said. "We need to take a break, because like this, we are not going anywhere." Mark recovered and sat up. There was not much to say at this point. Derek was right. They needed to take a real break to gather some resemblance of strength. "What does that smell?" Mark said. "Jez, it's bad," agreed Derek. "Did you shit yourself, Aaron?" Derek said, trying to make it sound like a joke, but it didn't work. Aaron did not answer, so Derek crawled over to him. Mark closed his eyes and leaned back against a fallen tree. He was so tired and wore out. "Mark," Derek said. "What?" Derek was quiet for a moment. "I think that it is over," he said quietly. "What do you mean by over?" "We are just taking a break." "Okay." Mark suddenly opened his eyes. "Wait, what are you saying?" He got up and walked over to Aaron, where Derek was sitting. "I think that he is dead," Derek said in a strange tone of voice. Aaron did not breathe. There was no pulse and his skin was cold to the touch, too cold. "What do we do?" Mark said. "CPR or what?" Derek just shook his head. "Too late for that. Let's just go. We have to get a signal or make it to the car. We will have to call 911 inch." They picked up the sled and started walking. Both felt numb, none of them really understanding or wanting to deal with this right now. "We will have to tell Helen," Mark said. "How do you tell her that Aaron is dead?" "How long have they been married, do you know?" "Must be 7 or 8 years by now." "The kids, damn, this is fucked up," Derek said. They kept walking, both detached, just walking, pulling the sled. Chapter 9. Epilogue. The trail turned upward, and it was harder to pull the sled. They hardly noticed. They just mechanically kept walking. The birds kept up their regular chirping, and the woods joined in, making the sounds that trees make when the wind catches them. But there was another sound, a sort of beeping sound that they at first couldn't identify. "What is that?" Derek asked. Mark listened and damn, it's your phone. Get it quick. Derek found his phone and pulled it out of his jacket pocket. He had received a message. "I have 1 bar. He quickly dialed 911. The phone went dead. "Let's go. We need to get to the top of this hill to get a signal," Derek said. With renewed strength, they picked up the sled and started walking. It was not far, maybe 100 feet or so, but it was still not easy, pulling the sled. When they reached the top, Derek had a signal and placed the call to 911 again. This time, 911, what is your emergency? the woman on the other end asked. While Derek was making the call, Mark looked around and further down the hill, beside the trail was the sign. You are now entering the 100-mile wilderness, no places to obtain supplies or assistance. For the next 100 miles, do not attempt unless properly equipped and experienced. Mark shook his head. So close. If we had only pushed harder, he thought, knowing that they had pushed as hard as they could. They made it back to their car and did not have to wait too long before the authorities arrived. The police officer told them that they had to make the notifications. They did not have a problem with that since they were not to call Helen and tell her over the phone. They would talk to her once they got back home. A year later, Mark, Derek, and Helen returned, and by the sign they placed a smaller wooden sign that read, Erin's Trail.